So I wanted to introduce a series that I actually began on TikTok about maybe a year or two ago, where I began to go deep into the history of the word negro. Since my last video on this platform was regarding terms of endearment in Latino community, namely the diminutive forms of negro and negra, I think it's definitely something that I would like to share here on this platform. And I think there's just so much conversation that there is to be had around it. So the way that I was doing it on TikTok is that I wanted to really go deep into the history of the word negro in Latin America and how we saw that word cross over and the usage of the word Negro and how it also became a very demeaning term for African Americans here in the United States. But definitely it's interesting to see the history of that and how it has evolved and how it became a reclaimed word in Latin America for people who are very proud and wanted to really own and identify with their blackness as a Spanish speaking people who are proud to be Afro descendant. So, it's just a very powerful history to examine, but I wanted to go very, very deep into the root when I started just really at the etymology of things when it comes to that word to really give more perspective and understanding and just to really examine how what happens when words cross over from another lexicon into English usage. And the word negro is a word that really was borrowed. It was taken really from the Iberian lexicon. This is a word that was used by the Portuguese and the Spaniards, and it began with just a very negative and demeaning history towards enslaved Africans, and not just towards enslaved Africans, but it was also used towards indigenous people that the Spaniards first came across as well. When you see the history of specifically Spaniards coming into contact with very, very brown skinned indigenous people, it's a word that they also began to use towards them, but then it exclusively started to be used towards enslaved Africans to make a distinction between enslaved Africans and indigenous people. So what you're about to see is a combination of parts 1 and 2 as I introduced it on TikTok, and then I will start to introduce the other parts. I actually left off at a part 6 on TikTok because I just felt led to go in a different direction at that particular time, but I think it's something that I definitely want to continue to delve into and share with you guys, and I'm really, really excited to hear the feedback in this conversation, whether you're a Black American, whether you're from Latin America, whatever your background may be. I think it's a great conversation to have, and I'm looking forward to the comments and engaging and seeing people's thoughts and perspective on this. And you'll find, perhaps if you're not a person that really goes deep into these topics, that there's some things that you may have not heard before or didn't know, but just the research part of it, was just great for me, because I'm a historian. I have a bachelor's in history, and I've been doing independent study specifically on Caribbean studies over the past 15 years, and I'm actually going to be pursuing my master's because this is something that I'm very passionate about, and the knowledge that I have acquired, I love to share. I love to talk about and engage, into these topics with people, and I think it matters. I think it makes a difference. It's not just talking about it for the sake of talking, but it means something, and knowledge is power. And from a faith perspective, I truly believe in this scripture in Hosea 4:6. My people perish for a lack of knowledge. People underestimate the power and the importance of knowledge. Definitely, I'm excited to share this information with you guys. I'm excited to go into this topic, and I hope you enjoy what is being shared here. So here we go. Parts 1 and 2. Hope you enjoy. Looking forward to the comments. Yahweh bless. Shalom. So most people know that when you hear the word negro, it's just a Spanish translation of the word black. And when you type it into Google, this is what you're going to get. So at the very top here, we see that the etymology of this word, it's taking us from Spanish and Portuguese, but it's actually coming from the Latin. The pronunciation here is very important to understand this. When we read the definition, it says mid-16th century via Spanish and Portuguese from the Latin. Now, classical Latin has a hard G. So this word, though it's spelled the same way you spell the country of Niger, which was colonized by the French, it is not pronounced that way. It would have been pronounced Niger or Niger, or in the bottom there, Negre for black. And when you do deeper study into that particular word, you can see how it came over into the English language through the British, because it was a word that was borrowed from the Iberian lexicon, and it took on a closer pronunciation to the original and then became the derogatory term that we all know as the N-word. All right, so the definition goes on to say, a member of a dark-skinned group of peoples originally native to Africa and south of the Sahara. All right, so let's take that definition a little bit deeper. So this definition here is from the Shorter Oxford English Dictionary, the 1933 edition, which I specifically chose because when you compare the definition of negro coming from Google, dictionary.com, or Merriam-Webster to this, the racism is so clear. So here we have the word negro, also spelled negro with an I, 1555, Spanish or Portuguese negro, coming from the Latin nigrum, or again, that word here we see niger for black, neger, and there's that N-word. And an individual, especially male, belonging to the African race of mankind, which is distinguished by black skin, black woolly hair, flat nose, and thick protruding lips. Okay, now this is what got me. Look at an example of a phrase. To wash a Negro, to attempt an impossible task. And look at the sample sentences below. I brought me a Negro slave Defoe. Negro minstrels, a troupe of comic entertainers having blackened hands and faces who sing plantation songs in the manner of American Negroes. Stay tuned for part 2. All right, y'all. So I want to bring your attention to the excerpt below because it's going to help us go deeper into the etymology and definition of the word negro. This is an excerpt from an article written in 1988 in the New York Times titled Connotations of Black Held as Non-Racial. It reads, Black arts refers not to non-Christian but to magic and necromancy. Necromancy does come from medieval Latin's alteration of necro, which was from the Greek, not the Latin, for death. But English words using neg or neg to refer to blackness come from Latin language's words for black or go back to the original, unprejudiced word for black, negro. The Oxford English Dictionary confirms the information provided here. So let's go back there and start by taking a look at the definition of necromancy. So the definition of necromancy here takes us back through Middle English, earlier negromancy spelled with an I or a Y, then back to medieval Latin, nigromantia, an alteration by association with Latin, niger, niger, nigre, or present-day pronunciations such as Niger or Niger, meaning black, black art, which is the meaning of nigromantia. Basically meaning divination, witchcraft, specifically black witchcraft, black divination. So I'm going to address that a little bit later in other parts because I want to show how the negative connotation with the word Negro specifically comes in through the Latin via Christianity, namely the Catholic Church. The definition goes on to say of Latin necromantia, which actually comes from the Greek, pretty much pronounced the same, then the root word necro. Then the definition reads, the pretended art of revealing future events, etc., by means of communication with the dead, more generally magic, enchantment, conjuration. Now let's go to that root word necro and see what that definition says. The definition reads, it is of Greek origin, dead body or person occurring in compounds either of Greek origin as necropolis, etc., or of modern formation as necrobiosis, etc. And then we see several other words with necro as the root relating to worship or any type of relationship with the dead or a dead thing. Deeper studies into this word reveal that there are historians that actually believe that the etymological origins of the word negro are rooted in the Kemetic language, aka Egyptian. So let's get into that and more in part 3.